Hi,
Right.
everybody. This is Perry from the White Pigeon Township Library, and we are very excited to do a Tuesday talk today with Lisa Fipps, who is an author for young people. And we are just very glad to be able to talk to her today. With us today, we have McKenna. She is sharing the screen with me. And we have also, I don't know how you're seeing the group of people, but we've got Judy to the left. I think that's the left of me. She is on staff here. We also have Lori.
I'll raise my hand.
Yes. And we have Stacy all the way down. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I will just let Lisa take this away. And without further ado, here is Lisa Fipps.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am the director of marketing for a public library, so I understand what libraries are all about and how much work you guys do and how much you are the importance of libraries and how much you are appreciated by your patrons, even if they don't say so all the time. I am originally from Kokomo, Indiana. That's where I currently live as well, which if a lot of Michiganders have driven through Kokomo and cursed its name for all the stoplights, but we now have a freeway, so feel free to drive on through. I did live in Texas for a while. I lived in Irving and worked in downtown Dallas for a company there. And then I had to come back to Indiana. My mother had Alzheimer's and I needed to take care of her. I have technically a degree in journalism and I went to Ball State University. And then I slowly transitioned into marketing. But my life dream has always been to be an author of books, specifically for children's books. And so I started working on that and I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. So anyone who's watching or listening who is interested in writing for children, that is my go-to resource for you, is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And so I started writing this book, Starfish, which might be backwards, sorry if it is. And I started writing it because I thought, you know what, if I only get one book published in my whole life, I want it to be this book, because this is the book that I needed when I was a kid. I'm fat, I grew up fat, and when I was looking on the shelves, I've always been a library user since like I was born. And when I was looking on the shelves in my elementary school library and even at my public library, they didn't have any books about kids like me. And it made me feel even more alone in what I was going through. And so when I started writing and I looked around and I was like, they still don't have that book. So I wrote it. It's my first book. It's a novel in verse, which is poetry, a form of free form poetry. And I am currently writing my second book. It's due to my editor on October 8th. So I'll be working on that tonight as soon as I disconnect. And then I'll start in on my third book. And I've already started an adult novel, but we don't talk about that yet. They normally like you to write in one genre for a while before you switch. So I just love to write. And when stories come to me and characters come to me, I like to tell their stories. And so Starfish is a book about a girl named Ellie who is bullied relentlessly because she is fat. And she's even bullied at home. As a matter of fact, her biggest bully is her mother, who really just wants her to be okay, but she goes around about it in the complete wrong way, which a lot of parents do. And so during her journey, she realizes that instead of there being something wrong with her, there's something wrong with people who are cruel, because people who are healthy and normal and good don't make other people feel horrible all the time. So there's something wrong with them and not her. And she has a right to be seen and to be heard and to be herself and to what I call starfish, which is take up her room in the world. And so starfish is often used as a verb for me. And so that's sort of a little bit about me and my writing journey, and who I am. But I want to open it up for questions and keep this short as we can, because I know my pastor years ago when I lived in Texas said, I won't preach any longer than your butt can sit. So I tend to have that same philosophy. I'm speaking. I won't speak any longer than your butt can sit. So.
Well, that sounds great. I'll go ahead and get started with the questions. I love this book. I really did. And I went into it thinking of it as assigned reading, because, you know, librarians, sometimes you have assigned reading. You need to get that for a program. And I found myself writing notes and just really rereading parts. And I just thought it was very thought-provoking. And thank you, Lisa, for writing this book. I had a few things that I wrote down that kind of captured my attention. One of the quotes was, "No matter what others say or do, embrace what makes you you." And I just think that's the coolest thing. And I really enjoyed many parts of your book. In the chapter Pulling Sneakies, where she hung out with Grandma, who was an ally, she learned to play piano. And the song that was mentioned was "All You Need Is Love." The obvious title. Was there a reason you chose that song?
You know, okay, so a little teeny bit of backstory is originally that was going to be, oh shoot, I can't think of the name of it. It was going to be a different song. It'll come to me in a minute.
I put you on the spot.
We made some changes, a little bit of changes in the characters, and so I took that out, and then I was like, okay, what would be a fairly simple tune to play on the piano if you're learning, and yet get some of the message across as well? And so you can't go wrong with the Beatles.
That's true.
It became that song. And I really liked it. The more I listened to the song, the more I liked it, because I listen to songs when I'm getting in character for writing. I have a playlist for Starfish on my website. And one of the songs is Brave by Sarah Bareilles. But yeah, All You Need Is Love. That's how that came about. So I can't remember the name of the song. That's going to drive me nuts. But yes.
Well, I'll pass it over to McKenna. Do you have a question, McKenna?
Yes. What was the hardest part about writing the book?
That's a good question. You know, what I always tell people is everything that happened to Ellie happened to me. A version of it did. But Ellie got the watered down version. Because if I had written everything that happened to me and been as honest as I'm being right now, it would have to be probably an adult novel. There's way too many things that happen. And so, so I just lost my train of thought, and I'm so sorry for that. Refresh my memory of your question on where I was headed down with that.
What was the hardest part about writing the book?
Okay, that's it. So I knew I was headed down that road for a reason. But so when I was writing it, I had to try to kind of relive all of that again, everything that happened to me. So, for example, I went to the school that I grew up going to, and I sat in the parking lot, and this was after school was over, because I was like, I don't want you guys thinking I'm like this weird stalker out here with kids. So I waited. It was a Sunday afternoon, and no one was around. But I just kind of looked through the windows from the parking lot, and I remember what happened here, and I remember what happened here. And so reliving that to just get down to that authentic emotion was probably the hardest. But the hardest poem to write is when I think it's called, oh yeah, it is Behold the Thing, where she confronts her mom. I will never read that out loud, ever. Yeah, that was the hardest to write.
It sounds like it really opened a lot of old wounds for you.
Oh, completely. But that's why I know that sounds like a bad thing, but actually the whole point of Starfish for me is being authentic. And I think that if you've been fat and struggled with your weight, and I wasn't authentic, it would ring like untrue. So it had to be true, even if it hurt.
Mm-hmm. Lori, go ahead with your question.
So I was really thinking over these questions and wanted to ask a couple of different, but I'll ask one for now, more about just your style and the process. It's beautifully written. I loved it. I read it in one afternoon and just could not put it down. But the style of it is just so unique and almost therapeutic, as if it's a journal. And I just was wondering about how you decided to write in that style. Do you see yourself writing again in that style for your next novel or future novels? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My process is a little bizarre, but I don't feel bad now anymore about it because I found out Linda Mullally Hunt has the same process. And that is, I get these little video clips in my head. Like when characters start coming to me and a book starts coming to me, I see these little video clips, and just like you would see a movie trailer. And I watch them and I just observe what's going on. And I remember, for example, when the video clip came to my head about Ellie starfishing in the pool for the very first time. You know, she was in the pool and she was floating, and then she looked so sad. And then she stretched out like a starfish, and she started getting this smile that just got bigger and bigger. And I was just like, what happened that day? What made her so sad that day? And what made her do that pose? What made her starfish? And so that's sort of how my process is. And I'm hoping for the day I get a full-length feature movie in my head and I can just like type along as the movie goes. But I still just get video clips. But on some books, I get way more video clips than others. Actually, I got fewer video clips with Starfish than my other books. And I think that's because Starfish was partly my story. But so I started trying to write it in prose because I thought everybody writes in prose, right? I mean, I didn't think about free verse. And and every time I would sit down to write, it would come out as a poem. And I'm like, oh, I can't do this. But I thought, well, okay, you know what? I'm getting the idea down, if nothing else. So I left it there. And then and every time I tried to write it in prose, it just felt so clunky because, for example, like if you're writing in prose and you're going, to the car, you have to get the description of going out the door and walking to the car. And to me, I was just like, no, I don't want that. I want them in the car fighting. I don't want to know how they got into the car. I don't care how they got in the car. The reader can figure out they got in the car. I want to see the fight in the car. And so it was frustrating to me. And then I opened up Sonia Sohn's book, Stop Pretending: What Happened When My Big Sister Went Crazy. And I was like, I can do this. I can do the whole book this way, because I didn't realize at the time that you could. And then I started reading all the novels in verse I could get my hands on. I think until I started working on book 2, I have read every middle grade and YA free verse there is, because that's part of my job of studying the market. But so it's between, and then I think also part of the reason there's such a draw to me for poetry is the first writing award I ever won was for a poem. And then being a journalist and having to really write tight, where you don't have time for flowery stuff. You just have to get down to the bare bones, but yet you still have to do the heart. So I always consider novels in verse being like writing the skeleton, but with the heart. And then you strip away everything else, the hair, the skin, the organs, because what matters is the structure, and the bones, and then the heart. And so all that together kind of combined for that. And yes, book 2 is definitely verse. I did, because I was like, I don't want people to just get bored with verse, but verse is getting more and more popular because especially with kids having shorter attention spans. And also because I think it's that whole point of, I always tell people it's like wringing a dish towel, right? Or a beach towel, whatever. You get rid of all the excess and then you're left with this, right? And so you wring out every word that you can, and then you're left with the rest. And plus, I think too, especially if you have a book on tough topics, which if you notice, a lot of novels are in verse are on tough topics, the white space is actually giving you breathing room emotionally. And so, and then as far as the process, I don't write start to finish. Like I just write when a poem comes to me, and then I figure out where it's going to go. But I normally know the very beginning and the very ending, and then I just have to piece every single poem between those two. So if that makes sense, that's what I do.
Thank you. Yes, I was wondering if you filled in as you went along.
Yeah. And because every now and again, you have to write a poem to kind of bridge two poems. I try really hard not to do that because I just want that. But every now and again, just to flow it, you have to, like, I call it create a poem. But the rest are just, they're basically the most important parts of the story that you need to know.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Stacy, how about you?
So I don't know if I have any questions in particular, but I do want to say that I absolutely loved the book. Previously, I read it in one afternoon. I could not put it down. I liked the idea of what you just said about the white on the pages being like a space for emotion, because I actually did cry on a part of the book when I read it. I felt like I was actually reading a little bit of my story. And specifically on the piece where you said that your mom had made a comment, or Ellie's mom had made a comment about something she ate, and that comment in particular had changed Ellie's life, for good. And that one hit me. And so I couldn't put it down. I absolutely love the book. I'm a school teacher, high school. I can think of, this book just being really popular with girls at school. Like I loved it. I can't say enough good about it. So thank you for writing it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
One question people often ask me is, was my mom like that? And she was. She was very much like that. And I mean, that doesn't mean, I always tell people we had a very complicated relationship, because of course I loved her. But she never stopped. And I understood, as I got older, I understood her motive was pure in that she just wanted me to be okay. Yeah. But she went about it all the wrong way. And most parents do. And I do have a resource on my website, on the resources page. I have an anti-bullying brochure, and it gives tips for kids, parents, and teachers. And then I just added one. It's called, I think, Diet Culture something. It's not mine, but someone wrote it and asked me to like proof it, you know what I mean? As in like factually, like, is this true to the fat person experience? And it has amazing resources for kids, parents, teachers, and communities who want to deal with that issue, because people don't realize that one comment can start a lifetime of eating disorders.
Yeah. And I think that's what I thought was amazing about the book, to the ending, and that Ellie found her voice, and that she realized that it wasn't her, it was everyone else who was being mean to her. And I think that if there was a book like that I could have read, probably maybe things could have been a little different for me. So I just like love that for young readers, young girls that are going to read that. I think that there's not a book quite like that. So I loved it.
It's interesting to me that I get through social media, instant messaging, private messaging, and through my website, people will email me. And I have had people, men and women, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, telling me that Starfish helped them heal what had happened to them decades ago that they have been carrying all this time. And
I could see that.
Yeah. And then I have a doctor. There's a doctor. She teaches in New York. She's a pediatrician. She also teaches, she's at a teaching hospital. And she's making all the second years read it. And she's trying to get the dean to make it required reading for all med students. And it's amazing the people's reaction, because 70% of Americans are fat. And yet, if you watch social media and you look at the TV and movies, you would think it's 30% are fat. And the way that they're treated is often inhumane.
Another thing that struck me in this book, it wasn't always just bullying about that topic. Catalina's family was mistreated basically because Hispanic. The enemy number 3, I felt like was lashing out before he got attacked for being
exactly.
And so yeah, it was all encompassing and not just saying don't be mean to fat people. It was be kind. You don't know their story. You there isn't a reason to not be kind.
Yeah, I think that the ending poem, which talks about there's room for all of us. I think that is really kind of the point. Is even people who aren't fat, they extrapolate from the book. I know a woman personally who's like 6'3", and she's always been made fun of because she's a woman who's 6'3". And she literally has now a hunch on her back from trying to make herself small all the time. And then I've gotten from the sweetest little review from a little boy who related to it because he's being picked on because he likes the color pink. And so it's just amazing that people get it. They get the whole message is be yourself and be okay with who you are. Yeah.
Judy, how about you?
I do. Well, you answered one of my questions, which was similar to Lori's. And I found it I loved the book, first of all, but I had never read anything that was written in free verse. And so at first, it took me a few minutes to get into the rhythm. But once I did, I felt like Ellie was talking to me, and it flowed, and it was so easy. And it was just like hearing her voice almost. So I really did enjoy that and have a whole different opinion of free verse now. But I wanted to ask you, and now that I truly know that this is your story, I was struck by the friendship that she had with Catalina, the Hispanic girl, and her family. And was that fabricated, or did you have a friend too that happened to be different in a different way that helped you through your struggle?
Yeah, Catalina, several of the characters are what writers call composite characters, where we take some like the traits of this person and the traits of this person, and we make a person. And so Catalina was a made up person, but she is a person based on several people in my life who have been like Catalina to me.
Okay.
The best of them creates Catalina.
And
And
I love the friendship and her family and how they took Ellie in.
Yeah. And of course, her mom is named after Sonia Sones. Her mom's name is Sonia because Sonia Sones became my mentor after having read that book and then started down the path of novels and verse.
Okay.
So I actually took a special class from It Highlights Foundation with Sonia. And then now we email, and she read the first version of Starfish and all that. So, yeah. And some people I do that too. I give like honorary, name them in honor.
Awesome. I'll be looking forward to your next book.
Oh, thank you. I'll be looking forward to getting it finished.
Yeah, it sounds
It's
like
actually
you have
finished.
little to do.
Yeah, I'm actually finished. I just, writers never let go of it until they're forced to let go of it, because they'll just write and tweak and edit and rewrite and tweak.
Well, I so appreciate your time, Lisa, and all of you for joining us today.
It was fun.
I can't even tell you how many people I'm going to tell about this book. It's just a wonderful book and could be so uplifting to so many people. And so we are very glad for your time and for your effort here.
Thank you.
I will go ahead and sign off. Thank you everyone for watching. And
Thank you.
that missed us on Facebook, tell your friends they can catch it on YouTube also on our White Pigeon Township Library page. Thank you all.